Episode 10 of Thursday Thoughts. Repair or replace? Just real quick before we get started, if you guys could like and comment, that really helps out the YouTube algorithm. Also, there's a PayPal link down below if anybody would like to donate to the channel. That'd be much appreciated. I was watching a video from Edison Motors. If you guys aren't aware of Edison Motors, they're in Canada. They're building a diesel electric truck with it's an electric truck with a cat generator. It's really cool. They got a lot of cool stuff. I'll link their channel down below. Let me play the video here. I'll play the first part of the video. The second part's just him rebuilding the starter.
So I gotta say, this is the kind of mechanic you want. So we had an issue where the starter went on this truck, and where a lot of guys will just say, you need a new starter. Dan here decided to take apart the starter and make it work again.
So you see in that first part of that video, he's talking about how that's what you want in your shop is a mechanic that won't just tell you to replace the parts. One thing I want to mention is for his purpose, that might be exactly what he needs and that's exactly what he's looking for. But you got to think about, like, so in my job here, let's just use the starter example. So say we got an excavator that's got a broken starter. So there's might be 6 guys waiting for that, not waiting for that machine, but operator and the rest of the crew waiting to get some work done, and they're waiting for that machine. So if I spend 2 hours, taking the starter off, rebuilding it, putting it back together, that's 12 man hours plus me, it's 14 man hours that nothing's been getting done. So yeah, even if say the parts are a quarter of the price of a new starter, you're losing productivity and you're losing time. So it makes more sense for me just to replace the starter, spend an hour maybe replacing the starter and get that machine running so they can go, instead of spending the time to rebuild the starter, take it apart, figure out what's wrong. That might take a few hours. I mean, don't get me wrong, I really like rebuilding stuff and it's fun to do that kind of stuff, but in today's reality, it's not worth it. A lot of times it's not even worth it. A lot of times, if you factor in your labor and your parts, it's just as much or cheaper to just buy a reman starter. Let's use a starter example. It's just as cost effective to buy a new starter or a reman starter and put it on than it is to rebuild it. Let me just tell you a quick story here. When I worked at the John Deere dealer, one of the guys was rebuilding an axle on a skid steer. So they call it an axle. It's where the wheel, if it's a wheel skid steer, it's where the wheel bolts on, and then there's some bearings in there, and then the sprocket bolts to the inside. So he spent like 2 days and it was like $700 worth of parts rebuilding this axle. And he never checked the price of a new one. The new one was only like $800. So he had 2 days and $700 worth of parts and 2 days worth of labor for like an $800 part. So you just gotta pay attention, and you gotta look, and you gotta see what's more cost effective. I'm not knocking the guy from Edison Motors. That's what works good for him. That's his thing. That's his whatever. I still like their videos, man. They make some cool stuff. You should really go check them out. I'll link their stuff down below. Check out that whole video. I'll link that also if you guys want to see the rest of that video. That's just my opinion. You just gotta, sometimes it's way more cost effective just to buy a new part and put it on than it is to rebuild the part.